Go. We are open up. Hello. We're gonna let everybody come in for the next few minutes here before we get a good head count. Oops. Go back. Great, our room's filling up. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Hope you're having some nice clear skies here in California. I heard it's nice and clear in Sacramento today, which is great news. Get some good fresh air today, maybe later on.
Wonderful change, yes.
Stay socially distant though, or physically distant. I heard there's a conversation trying to shift the word from social distancing to physical distancing, because social distancing might imply that we wouldn't want to, people wouldn't want to hang out together. But physical distancing is a little more inviting.
More accurate.
Yeah, a little more accurate too. Great. Room's filling up here. For those of you who have been attending for a little bit, you might see a new face here. My name is Michael Weber. I'm a student intern at the Finance Center. Alan could not join us today, so I'll be moderating for us today.
Michael Ballstead. I've been on a few of these calls, and a number of our folks are in a regional meeting today, so I'm taking over for them. So we thank you in advance for your grace and patience, because we may not be as smooth as the others who conduct every week.
They've had some practice,
yes.
But maybe we can freshen up our week a little bit. All right, got some more people coming in. We're gonna wait maybe a couple more minutes for people to join in, and we'll begin our presentation shortly, everybody. Oh, great, we have some questions coming in already. Okay. Good morning, everybody. All right. All right. Happy Wednesday, everybody. If you're just joining us, we'll begin in just a few moments here. Okay. I think we can get started here. Good morning, everybody. My name is Michael Weber. I am a student intern for the Northern California Small Business Development Center Finance Center. I'm joined together here with Mike Ballstad, and welcome to our live Q&A. We're going to begin with a presentation, and after our presentation, we're going to have a question and answers section. Down below on the bottom of your screen, you're going to see a little button that says Q&A. Go ahead and enter in your questions there so that our panelists and other people can also see your question, just in case they might have the same question as you do. If you have any technical difficulties, please type in the chat and I can help you out. And that should be about it. Mike, it's up to you.
Morning, everybody. Welcome to session 55. Oh my gosh, seems like it's been going on forever, huh? So this is one of our weekly small business town hall meetings. We're also joined today with some legal professionals that also are going to be able to field some questions for us today. Again, we're presented by the Northern California SBDC Finance Center. And if you go to the next slide, Michael. Thanks. So we're the Northern California Small Business Development Center. We're actually funded by the SBA in the state of California. We're what they call a technical assistance provider. And what that really means is that because of your taxes that have already been paid, what's made available to you is advisory services on everything from financial to marketing to things just like we're dealing with today for no out-of-pocket cost. Our group, the Finance Center, specializes in helping businesses get capital. So in times like this, it's the disaster loans and those different programs and grants that are available. And in more normal times, it's loans for acquisition of a business or growing a business, and the various programs that are available there, helping you put together your financials so that you've got a good loan package put together to help you gain that capital. So on our team, we have the folks who normally are helping that you would see on here are Scott Rogalski, who's our director, and Sunita Maharaj, who's associate director, and they're both in a regional meeting today. So they've entrusted this to myself, and I'm, again, a regional advisor with the center. Michael, we can go to the next slide, please. So our agenda today, first, we're going to have a disclaimer, because of course there's always one of those. We're going to go through the parameters for both the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program as well as the PPP or Payroll Protection Program. We're going to go through the forgiveness reductions for payroll and non-payroll expenses. We'll discuss upcoming webinars put on by SBDC. We will talk about the CASEFORCE Attorney Coalition that's providing so much greatly needed service during these times. And then we'll finalize with a question and answer period. But first, before we go on, we have Janelle Green, who would like to share with us some of their upcoming webinars. Go ahead, Janelle, welcome.
Hi, thank you, Mike. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. So I don't have any program updates at this time, but on the webinar front, just wanted to point out, so today at noon, NAWBO, the National Association of Women Business Owners, their Sacramento chapter is hosting a joint webinar with the SBA and the Capital Region SBDC. The SBDC is going to discuss strategies to pivot one's business, and I'm going to be providing an overview. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., we're going to have an in-depth discussion of our SBA programs. We're hosting a webinar at 9 a.m. that morning. And then tomorrow afternoon at 1 p.m., I'm going to deliver a joint webinar with the Sacramento chapter of SCORE. And the speaker from SCORE is going to discuss strategies for developing repeat sales and customer loyalty in any economy. If you're interested in these webinars, you want to check out what we have coming up. We update our calendar regularly. Please visit our district office website at sba.gov/ca/Sacramento. And then there you can look at the dates and register directly. So hope to see some of you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Janelle, so much for being here today. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, so our disclaimer today. First, things are changing all the time. Many of you probably applied for your original loans back in March, early April. Things are changing quite often. So everything that we're discussing today was current at the time we put the slide deck together. What I would also say is expect change, because things will change as we go on. PPP, new applications stopped being accepted as of the 8th of August. So I know there have been some discussion going around that there might be a phase 2 at some point, but at this point, there are no applications being accepted for new PPP loans. EIDL, or the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, has reopened, and they are most businesses, so that would be sole proprietorships, S Corps, C Corps, and even 501c3 nonprofits are eligible to apply for these programs. However, the advance, what a lot of people knew of as that $10,000 that you could get that you don't have to pay back, that program is completely empty. So the advances are no longer available. So I would say at this point in time, do not hesitate to apply for the EIDL funds. There's still plenty available. If you go to the website at sba.gov, at the top, you'll notice a yellow banner. Clicking on that banner will take you to the application portal. If that portal is there, they're still accepting applications. So I would like, again, don't hesitate to apply it. It certainly can't hurt if you need the funds. Go ahead next, Michael. So going over some of the parameters and understanding what these loans mean and what the terms are. So the economic injury disaster loan is a non-forgivable loan. That said, the rates are at 2.75% for nonprofits, 3.75% for regular enterprises, for-profit businesses, for 30 years. So although they're not forgivable, you do have a long time to pay them back at very low rates. There are no payments due for the first 11 months. So those payments are deferred, and you would begin having payments in month 12, and the interest does accumulate along the way. For any loans over $25,000, they do require collateral, and any loans over $200,000, they do require a personal guarantee. Again, these loans are not forgivable, but they do have a lot more. They're designed to be much more flexible. These loans are designed so that they can cover any of your operating costs, cost of goods sold. It can even be used in payroll in the case that you're not using PPP for payroll. However, you're not allowed to use them to grow or expand your businesses. So you can't pay the principal on your mortgage or your business secured business loans. You can only pay the interest as part of that debt. And you're also not able to pay any of your federal tax liens if you have those with these funds. For the PPP, one step back, Michael, please, thanks. On the PPP, if it is not forgiven, it's a 1% loan. And the reason it says 2 or 5 years, that's going to depend on whether you applied and received your loan before or after June 5th of this year. Loans prior to June 5th were 2-year loans. Those thereafter were 5 years. If you were part of the former group before June, my suggestion would be to reach out to your bank and find out if there's a way to change those terms. You would need to talk to your lender about that. With payment deferral, there's 10 months after the covered period. The reason that is it's during that period of time that you have the opportunity to submit your forgiveness application, and then for the period for the institution to determine forgivability of that loan and determining whether you're gonna, if there's any portion of it that you will have to pay back. But assuming that you used the funds according to the ratios of payroll versus non-payroll expenses, as well as the number of full-time equivalent employees you have and the rates of pay you paid. If you've done that all according to their formulas, up to 100% of that is forgiven, or forgivable, I should say. Again, on the PPP, 60% or more of those loan proceeds have to be used for payroll and related expenses, which we'll discuss on a slide here in a moment. And 40% can be used on utilities, mortgage interest for your monthly mortgage payments on a business facility, but not the principal again, and your rent or lease payments. You're not allowed to spend the money on workman's comp, federal taxes, and anything that is not part of the 4 uses, which is rent, utilities, payments, and interest, payroll and interest rather. Okay, Michael. So required documents for PPP. There is a forgiveness calculation form that you'll need to complete. And then there's a Schedule A, that's part 4 of the application. The links that are here on the page are for the application as well as the instructions for the application. And Michael, I don't know if you're able to do this. Can you put those links into the chat so they're clickable? Thanks.
Of course, yeah, we'll do that.
Okay, so loan forgiveness reductions. So a lot of questions come up around, it could be anything from what if people refuse to come back to work. There could be a number of reasons they wouldn't want to come back. Some people it previously had to do with unemployment that was available to them. For others, it's they may not feel safe coming back to work for health reasons, or they may be vulnerable or have a vulnerable person at home. But to any extent, business owners like yourselves were concerned that, well, if I can't bring that person back to work, am I going to be penalized? So what has happened is that in the Flexibility Act that came out in June 5th, there were some things that were put into place to protect you against some of these things. So you won't be impacted by a reduction in full-time equivalent employees if you can document that in good faith you made an attempt to. For instance, if you weren't able to rehire individuals who were employees as of February 15th of 2020, and if you were unable to hire similarly qualified persons for unfilled positions before December 31st, 2020. So going to those first two pieces, let me clarify what that means. The PPP loans that you applied for, the amounts that you received were based on payroll numbers you had for last year. And so they measured the number of full-time equivalent employees you had, as well as the rates of pay that you made for those employees. And that's what they based the calculation on. So once you receive the funds, they've got a reasonable expectation that you're going to do your best to use those funds to do exactly that, to keep people employed rather than on unemployment. So when they look at your roles as of the time you're through the end of your covered period, they're going to measure, did they keep their employees? Well, in this case, what they figured out along the way is you may not be able to, the people may not be willing to come back to work. There may not be people available otherwise. And so they built that into the act. So if you had made offers along the way to continue your employees to come back to work and they refuse to come back, and you document that in writing and keep it, that is one exception that you can get, so that let's say that you had 10 employees, you offered, and you've got 60% or you have to keep at least 75% of your employees. Well, if you offered all of your employees their job back and 5 of them refused, well, that would be a 50% reduction in employees. But because they refused and you documented that, those 5 employees would not be counted against your calculation. Thereby, the 5 people that did come back to work would be counted as 100%. Okay, so that's one exemption you'll be able to have. The other piece is if you couldn't hire them, the people wouldn't come back, and you couldn't hire other similarly qualified people along the way. Because they extended the covered period out to December, you've got that amount of time to get people to come back. So they're also going to look at, did you make an attempt to hire people back, or were there just not a labor pool available to you? One important requirement to understand is that you must report situation to EDD within 30 days and keep written offer to rehire, rejection of offer, and efforts to hire a similarly qualified person in your records. Because what they're talking about here is if a person refused to come back and if they were still trying to collect unemployment, that could be an issue for the employee, not for you. But you need to keep record of that and report it. Okay, next, Michael. For purposes of calculating loan forgiveness, reduction required for salary and hourly wage reductions in excess of 25% for certain employees are all forms of compensation included, or only salaries and wages. This only takes into account decreases in salaries or hourly wages. So for instance, let's say that you've got employees that you have a restaurant or any other business where an employee may have part of their compensation being tips. Well, you could be giving them all of the same work you were prior. They're getting the same amount of hours, but if you have fewer patrons or tips are lower, you're not in control of the fact that the tips being paid are lower. So really they're focused on the compensation that you're committed to giving them as an employer, which would be the hourly or salary rates. Okay, and next, if a borrower does not pay biweekly or more frequent, then it will need to calculate payroll costs for partial pay periods. The covered period for all will end December 31st of 2020. Go ahead, Michael. For purposes of calculating cash compensation, the gross amount should be used when calculating and not net. What they mean by that would be if you pay somebody $2,000 a month, but they have deductions coming out, for any of the deductions that they would have coming out that would reduce their pre-tax income, you're not considering that, you're considering their gross pay. And payroll costs that can be included in your calculation are what you're paying out of your PPP. All forms of cash compensation, including tips, commissions, bonuses, and hazard pay. And the cash compensation per employee is still limited to $100,000. And let me clarify what that line means. That doesn't mean that you could pay yourself or an employee $100,000 during this period. They're talking about the annual equivalent. So if you're looking at an 8-week period of time, you're really looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of, say, $16,000 for that period of time, because it's, that portion of $100,000 annual compensation, the prorated amount. And that goes to the next point. The amount of compensation of owner employees that is eligible for forgiveness depends on the business type and whether the borrower is using an 8 or 24-week covered period. 8-week max is $15,385, and the 24-week max is $20,833. And again, the reason that is if you're a business owner and you take your Schedule C, line 31, for last year, and let's say it was $100,000, well, you would divide that by 52, and that would give you your per week allowed amount. And that's where you get between the 8 and 24 week, you get those maximums. It cannot be more than the $100,000 annual limit of compensation. Anything further, feel free to email or call 833-ASK-SBDC, and we'd be glad to help you further on your specific situation.
I'll put some links down below for people to click on.
Thank you. Next, we go to other things that can be forgiven. Your healthcare and retirement costs. Group healthcare benefits will be considered payroll costs. Employer expenses for employee group healthcare that are paid or incurred during the cover period are eligible. Now, this doesn't include the amount that's paid by the employee. If you weren't 100%, if a portion of it is paid by the employees, that's their responsibility, and that's not a forgivable expense. Employer contributions for employee retirement benefits that are paid or incurred during the covered period are eligible. Let's say that you have a 401k plan, for instance. If you have any kind of safe harbor or matching program where you're making a matching or non-matching contribution to that plan, that would be considered a payroll expense as well. But what's not eligible are any portions paid by employees, nor can you accelerate employer contributions, from periods that would be down the road. It's only what's incurred during the pay periods within your covered period. Thanks, Michael. Next. And loan forgiveness for non-payroll costs, eligible business mortgage interest costs, business rent or lease costs, and business utility costs incurred prior to the covered period but paid during the covered period are eligible for loan forgiveness. So for instance, if your covered period happened in the middle of a utility period and that bill became due within your covered period, that would be, and you paid it within that would be allowed. Non-payroll costs are eligible for loan forgiveness if they were incurred during the covered period and paid on or before the next regular billing date, even if the billing date is after the covered period. So if you were in, say, the last couple of weeks of your covered period and your billing was due a week following that period, that paying at that time would be eligible for consideration in the forgiveness as well. Payments of interest on business mortgages on real or personal property, such as an auto loan for a business vehicle, are eligible for loan forgiveness. Interest on unsecured credit is not eligible, so like credit cards, for loan forgiveness, because the loan is not secured by real or personal property. The property is not at, the loan doesn't cause the real property to be at risk. Okay, next please. If a lease that existed prior to February 15th, 2020 expires on or after February 15th, 2020 and is renewed, the lease payments made pursuant to the renewed lease during the covered period are eligible for loan forgiveness. Similarly, if a mortgage loan on real or personal property that existed prior to February 15th, 2020 is refinanced on or after February 15th, the interest payments on the refinanced mortgage loan during the covered period are eligible. The reason we're speaking to this is they talk about how it has to be something that historically existed. You can't be having new financial arrangements you've taken on that could be perceived as being just because you got this forgivable money. So what they're clarifying is that if it was favorable to you to refinance the terms of a loan, then it's not like you were out getting a new loan and a new purchase that you're having the government pay for. It's more that you're resecuring an existing debt that you had on the books. The same goes with the lease. You're still leasing in the same place or the same equipment. You're just having to renew the terms of that contract. And finally, a service for the distribution of transportation refers to transportation utility fees assessed by state and local governments. Payments of these fees by the borrower is eligible for loan forgiveness. For more details, go to the website that Michael's going to go ahead and put in the chat. And I have to say, I would look at that. That is something that I have no familiarity with myself. And for SBA loan support, some things to also know, as there are many folks who are having the opportunity to secure these economic injury disaster loans that have 11 months of deferral, and the PPP loans that are, have deferral as well and are potentially forgivable. The SBA has also extended some support to folks that want to buy a business. So in other words, they're not seeking out emergency loans, but they are looking to buy a business because the economy is not 100% shut down and there are opportunities out there, or to grow and expand their business. And likewise, there are also people who already have these loans in existence. So what the SBA has done is for anybody who currently has an SBA loan, what they have done, and if you've not already enjoyed these benefits, you'll want to reach out to your lender. They are covering 6 months of your loan expenses for loans that are already in existence, that are already on the books. 6 months of your payments will be made. Likewise, if you were looking to acquire a business or expand your business and take on a new SBA loan, as long as it's fully funded by this 27th of September, they will cover the first 6 months of your loan. These won't be deferrals, these will be full payments. But again, the parameter is it has to be fully funded by the 27th. What I mean by that are there's some circumstances where you wouldn't get all of your loan proceeds at once because maybe you're doing a development or something where the money's being paid out in chunks. So it has to be fully funded by the 27th of September. And if that happens, then the first 6 months of your loan, you wouldn't have to make payments on. So this would be for 7A, 504, and microloans. Next, for SBA disaster contacts, we have a phone number of 800-659-2955. We also have emails for disaster customer service at SBA.gov, as well as if you were to have an economic injury disaster loan, for instance, if you were declined for that. This is an email for reconsideration, PDC recons at SBA.gov, and servicing for loans that already are on the books. That is ELPASO DLSC at SBA.gov or 800-487-6019. And Michael will put those in the chat so that you can save those as well. All right, next, please. And next, we have attorneys online to speak to a number of things as well. And the disclaimer for CASEFORCE is that these office hours are intended to be a resource for small businesses with fewer than 25 employees and nonprofits to learn information about various resources and legal issues relevant to the COVID-19 pandemic. But importantly, they are not intended to offer legal advice, and the leaders of the office hours are not able to represent office hour participants as their attorneys. This session is intended to address issues related to the pandemic, and panelists aren't able to comment on general non-pandemic related questions. Today's panelists, I show Kate Tyler as a general corporate law at Morrison Foerster. And I also have Cooper Spinelli, who I don't see on the list here, but I'd ask each of you, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and give me an introduction. And Kate first.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kate Tyler. I am a corporate attorney at Morrison & Foerster in San Francisco. I typically do a lot of startup representation, and I'm here to answer general corporate questions to the extent I can.
Thank you so much for being here, Kate. And Cooper?
Hi, everyone. Cooper Spinelli. I'm an employment and labor attorney with Morrison & Foerster in San Francisco.
Thank you for being here, Cooper. And so everybody, we'd be glad to open for questions and field any of the questions we can in our limited time today. What we also commit to is if there are questions that we can't answer here, Michael will be capturing those, and then we will, whoever is most able to represent or look at that topic, will get the answers together and have a response for you. If you have things that are more specific in nature to your case, right? Maybe not case, your circumstance, and you need very specific help, please feel free to contact us at 833-ASKSBDC. Our website also is at ASKSBDC.com, which has a list of our upcoming events. And then we have emails at loans@asksbdc.com. And if there are those of you or those you know who would be more comfortable in asking a detailed question in Spanish, please feel free to use our address at espanol@sbdc.com. And here I open up for any questions.
Great. Mike, would you like me to read them out for you?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right, we have a question from Sherry Soleski. Can the EIDL loan transfer to a new owner if the business is sold? If so, how does that happen? If not, does the loan need to be paid off before the sale is completed? Thank you.
And we don't have anybody from SBDC on the call for that today, correct? Or what, SBA, is Janelle still with us?
Janelle's still here with us.
Yes. Hi there.
Hey, Janelle. Hi, is that a question that you could respond to? The question is, we've got someone who's interested in purchasing a business. That business currently has an idle loan on the books. Is that loan able to transfer with the sale of the business, or does that have to be satisfied out of escrow?
You know, I wouldn't have that information. I would go to the EIDL program assistance, to the staff there. You know, you had provided, I think, the contact information. I would reach out directly to customer service at disaster assistance, because they'll be able to get in the weeds on whether that is correct or not.
All right, excellent. And so, and Michael, Sherry, Michael put that email address in the chat. So if you wouldn't mind, just simply copy that out of there and email. But also, if you need help navigating that, feel free to reach out at our call center line, and one of our advisors can help you contact them if that would be helpful.
Mhm. Okay. All right.
Thank you, Janelle.
Thank you, Janelle.
My pleasure.
We have a question here. We pay drinking water bill monthly to a Alhambra water company. Does the water expenses forgive against PPP?
That is very interesting, because it does indicate that you can pay up to 40% of your funds for utilities. Now, water from the water district is a utility. I don't know that privately purchased drinking water would fit that bill. That is one I would reach out to their lender on, because they're going to be submitting their forgiveness application through their lender.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Another question here says, I already got a small amount of EIDL, but now I need more EIDL. Do I apply with a new application, or can I request more EIDL based on my old loan?
EIDL at this point is a one-time loan program. You can't go back to the well for it. So while that is the case, there are other programs available, such as the State Guarantee Loan Program. That's certainly something that could be looked into. And that would be one where definitely call the 833 ASKSBDC, and they'll put you with somebody on the finance team that can help you look into that and find out if that would be something that would be appropriate for you.
Great, thank you, Mike. Here's one question from Debbie Lewis. How do I contact SBA to begin making payments on the EIDL for the accrued interest? Is there an online link to look at the EIDL balance?
Janelle, would you happen to know that?
I don't believe my video hasn't come on yet. I don't believe that there's a way to check for your balance. But again, you would want to go to their website and get information directly from the Office of Disaster Assistance. I don't want to elaborate and risk not being correct, but I would go there. Perhaps you can call and then get your balance, but I don't think you can find it online.
Do you think, Janelle, do you think that that might fall under the servicing? Because there's we provided a servicing contact as well. Do you think that servicing area, there was an email and a phone number, would that cover the servicing of EIDL loans as well?
Where was it based?
Let me see, Michael, do you have that handy?
I'm sorry?
Do you have that one handy? It was the slide that showed the SBA support, and at the bottom there was something that talked about SBA. There it is, that one there. I would say it's the servicing. It's 800-487-6019.
Yes, exactly. That's the contact information to reach out to. Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, so excellent. So yeah, so that's who you would contact. That's who services the loan, and they would be able to give you any instructions on how you could begin paying your accrued interest.
Great. I'm just going to
Thanks, Janelle.
I'm going to leave this up for the next question in case anybody needs it. Okay. Question from Stilson Snow. A client got EIDL. A critical machine of theirs broke and they need a new one, $8,000. Can they use EIDL funds to replace it?
My understanding would be no, because that is a purchase of capital equipment. That would be principal, not loan. However, if they were able to lease a new piece of equipment to replace that one, that likely would be allowed. I would want to look into that a bit further. And I do know Stilson. Hi, Stilson, great to see you. And so if you wouldn't mind, so you got my email address. Feel free to email me any of the information regarding that, and I can look into that a bit further for you.
Great, thanks, Mike. Another question from Stilson. I have several sole proprietor businesses who are collecting PUA. They have been paying themselves PPP. Neither they nor I can find any info about how to tell the EDD this is happening. Do you have a source who could tell them and me how to find the info about how to handle the PPP and PUA with the EDD? Ooh.
Or would you happen to be able to field that one?
I wouldn't have a contact at EDD, but I was trying to do a web search for that contact, but I don't have one offhand.
Nor do I.
No, thank you guys.
Yeah, me either. I would say, I guess the best way to go, I know people have had challenges reaching them via phone. Probably the best thing you're going to be able to do is look through their website.
We did a couple of weeks ago, we did circulate an article from the Chronicle that it included various tips and tricks to contact the EDD. So to the extent that's still relevant, I could circulate that around again too.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Thanks, Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
And Michael?
Yes.
Could you flag that question as well as their email address so that when Cooper gets that article, we can make sure that they get a hold of it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to our next question from Jill. Business interruption insurance is denied for our 2 bars in San Francisco and is being denied due to virus clause. San Francisco did update its COVID mandate to include verbiage that basically states the virus does destroy the business viability when it attaches to surfaces. Any updates from the California Insurance Commission that will require insurance companies to allow business interruption to apply? Do we have anyone that could answer that?
All I can state to that is if they were to go to insurance.ca.gov, that's California Department of Insurance, they could see what Mr. Lara, the commissioner, I know there was an update with regard to the fact that you can't disqualify claims out of hand is their statement. But it's going to be a matter of any of those updates would be right on the Department of Insurance website. And it would be for, they do have sections that are for agents and sections that are for consumers. So they probably would want to look under the consumer section of that website.
Great, thank you, Mike. And Brett, what did you share here? If you want to, oh, that's from the last statement, right? Okay. Okay, we're going to move on to our next question here from Bill. Question for SBA. Is the PPP forgivable or not in the following case? A nightclub which has been closed since March 16th has used its PPP funds, $165,000, for 60% payroll and 40% rent, and their covered period ends October 16th. This company has not been able to pay all its rent, so they are in default on their lease, and their landlord is non-negotiable on rent reductions or forgiveness. The landlord has begun eviction proceedings, so the business is not likely to reopen. Is the PPP forgivable if the tenant doesn't fight the unlawful detainer and instead gives the property back to the landlord and both agree to walk away as is without paying back rent? Did that come across?
Yes, no, I appreciate that. We can't make determinations at the district office. We're not making determinations on case-by-case examples. What we do is we point people to the frequently asked questions on the program, which are at the Treasury's website, and also the frequently asked questions that have to do with the forgiveness application process. I would point them there because that's truly gospel, and we really can't speak beyond that to get a sense. And there are specific questions about cases and eligibility and forgiveness being allowed. And so I would look at that for guidance. And then if there's more assistance that's needed, to reach out to the SBDC to get deeper into the case and determine eligibility.
Okay, Great, thank you. One more question from Bill. Question for SBA. What happens to the idle loan if the signatory dies before the 30-year full repayment? If there is a surviving spouse? If there is not a surviving spouse, does the SBA file a claim against the decedent's estate? Or, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that.
Mike, would you have an answer to that? I would again recommend reaching out to the disaster customer service, since they are in the weeds and all of the policies related to idle and could answer that kind of specific question, unless you have guidance.
In my reading of the FAQs, I didn't notice anything related to relating to a death of a borrower.
And Bill, I'm not sure if I understand your legal question here. You're asking, in the sale of a business when a California company buys another California company, can you say so? I think you didn't finish your question there. So if you want to resubmit.
It's continued in the next question.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay. In the sale of a business when a California company buys another California company, can you say something about the enforceability of a non-compete agreement with the seller of businesses versus the employees in regards to the customer lists and trade secrets? Would an enforceability change if a Delaware company buys a California company? Would it change if a California company has sales nationwide?
I guess I can take that one. I'm not sure what Bill means when he says the enforceability with the seller versus the employees. But I can say that it doesn't matter where the companies are domiciled or where they've been formed and what state. What matters is the residence of the individuals who are subject to the non-compete. And as far as did the question disappear? Oh, here it is. As far as whether or not the company has sales nationwide, it's the scope of the non-compete that matters. So there should be some geographic territory defined in the clause that tells you how far it extends. Cooper, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I don't have anything to add to that.
Thank you.
I'd like to give a reminder. The attorneys are very helpful. The scope of this call, though, isn't for general business questions. It's really for those things that are pandemic related. So we just appreciate if we could stay with the scope of the call. Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay. Question from Cindy Hood. Can I use the idle loan to pay myself? Is there a website that I can refer to that will tell me what expenses are acceptable and what reporting I need to do?
Certainly, if you can grab her email address, and we'll go ahead and get her an FAQ. But again, the idle is available for payroll expenses if you are not at the same time using PPP, creating a double dip situation. So it's very flexible in its use beyond just payroll. Just you're limited to not being, it's not able to be used for principal, for federal tax liens, and for any acquisition or growth of the company.
Thanks, Mike. Okay. We have a question from Marta. She joined us late, but she says, I missed the answer on how to start paying interest on my idle loan. How? Many thanks. She wants to know how to pay her idle loan.
Right, so that goes back to the email here at the bottom where it says servicing. And that gives an email address as well as a phone number that you can make contact and determine what the procedure is that they would have you start paying if you're wanting to pay now.
Chris Simmons is asking why it has taken him 4 months to know if he's approved for an idle loan, and even though he has applied and uploaded every document.
So a few questions there. If he could respond to what date did he apply? If he doesn't remember that, if he has in his email what the first two numbers of his application were. Because before that, a lot of the applications that were submitted before that first portal crashed, those folks all really needed to be resubmitting their application. So there was a period where people were having to reapply.
Thanks, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
A question from Kay. Re-idle funds. Do we have to spend down our existing accounts before we use the idle funds? Or can we use them for allowed expenses as soon as we receive the loan? For small companies under 5 employees, and employers also work at the business. For small companies, PPP funds, when applying, do we list only the employees or do we also include the owners?
Well, when they applied, if they are a W-2 employee, they would be considered part of that employee payroll. If they're a sole proprietor, again, it's coming from their Schedule C. With regard to their idle and PPP, if they have their idle and their PPP, they would be using the PPP for payroll. They would be using idle for those other expenses. What they would want to make sure not to do is use the idle for their payroll expenses while they're also utilizing the PPP.
Thank you, Mike. Question from Stilson. A partnership had an idle. Down the road, one of the partners wishes to sell his share to the other partner. Can idle be assigned from the partnership to a new sole proprietor business owned by the surviving partner? If so, what is the process?
It was an idle?
Yes.
It was an idle loan?
Yes.
I would use that servicing email or phone number.
Okay.
Because that's going to be an issue of servicing of that loan.
Thank you, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
A question here from Nick. I have several businesses which are being threatened with eviction because they have not been able to pay rent since they have been closed since March. What is the latest information about eviction moratorium? Do we have somebody that could speak on that today? Perhaps.
Hold on, I'm sorry, I'm trying to pull up the question here.
No worries.
So the eviction moratorium extensions are done on a county by county basis. So I would suggest that this particular individual go on his or her county website. The county should have a website, and just search eviction moratorium to see if the county, or if you're in an incorporated area of the county in a city, see if the city council has extended the eviction moratorium. We've noticed it seems like, at least in from what I've seen, it seems like it's about 75-25, where about 75% of cities have not extended and about 25% have.
Okay, thank you, Kate.
And Michael, sorry to interrupt. This is Brett. I just wanted to mention, I'll put it back in the chat window right now, but the case task force has been working on ongoing updates to a county by county resource guide. And when possible, we've also been, I believe, including information about eviction moratoriums and other resources. So I just put that link back up. It's hosted on the Berkeley Law School website, and it's updated about weekly. It's county by county. So if you run through the bookmarks or just search for the name of your county, you should be able to find information pertinent to your location.
Yeah, but if you're in a city, then search for your particular city under that county for specific moratorium guidance.
Thank you for that, Brett.
Thank you. Okay, we have a question here from Jill. SBA PPP documents signed on July 16th, but funds have not been dispersed. 2 emails to Bluevine stated funds should be received within 3 to 4 days. It's just one phone call on August 13th. A supervisor could not figure out why, but they would look into it. Bluevine customer support no longer picks up or allows messages because they're busy. What more can I do? Let's see.
Other than contacting Bluevine, I'm not sure what else you could do. Janelle, do you have any possible input on that?
Yeah, in that case, if they're not getting a response, we can provide support. They could reach us at, send us an email at our district office email address. That's sacramento_do@sba.gov. I'll put it into the chat thread, and provide us with the business name and as much information as you can, your application number as well, and we'll look into seeing what's happened.
Thank you, Janelle.
Sure.
We have a question here from Alex. Is it too late to apply for microloans to be funded by 927? Are they up to $50,000? What would be the interest rates on those and term? Sorry.
Okay, so I can't tell them the terms. Bottom line is if they can get applied and it closes and funds by the 27th, they would be fine. And at this point, you're at about 30 days. What I would suggest is for them to call 833-ASKSBDC, and you'll be able to talk with one of the Finance Center advisors, and they would be able to help direct you to whichever would be the right institution for you to talk with and find out if they think you can get funded in time.
Great, thank you. Okay. A question here from Moore Fencing. When I applied for PPP loan and received it, I had been watching the Zoom meetings at the time. I don't remember. I'm going to come back to this question. This is a question from Ann Ramirez. Per SBA procedural notice released on June 19th, 2020, a recipient could refinance the EIDL into the PPP. Do you know of any lenders that will accept the refinance? Do you see that question, Mike? Oop. Hello? Oh, no.
I'm looking here.
Oh, there we go. I can hear you now.
Yeah, so yes, it is true that if you have an EIDL, that the way it was constructed was that if you got your EIDL loan, the portion of it that you used for payroll and related expenses could be rolled into your PPP at the time you were getting the PPP. And that was because when they put out the act, the PPP didn't even exist when the EIDL came out. So the grant and the EIDL, people normally would have had those already by the time PPP was released. People would have applied for PPP. The amount they spent on EIDL could be rolled into that PPP loan. If that's not how it works for them, if they already have their PPP and they've already taken it, then I really don't see how they would refinance it because they've already taken the loan. They've already gotten their one PPP loan. So if I'm understanding them correctly, if they have an existing EIDL loan and they have an existing PPP loan, if they didn't declare that at the time, it should have been on their application and it should have happened automatically. They would have asked them for their documentation of what they spent on payroll. So I think it would be helpful to get more information from them on exactly the order in which they got their loans.
Thank you, Mike. Perhaps you could help me understand this question from Moore Fencing. I think he's saying that he received the PPP loan and he was under the impression, or they were under the impression that they could pay any and all payroll expenses, but they couldn't pay past taxes, and they're asking what they could do. It's a bit strangely worded.
So if I'm understanding them correct, if I'm understanding correctly, the insinuation is that they didn't pay their past payroll taxes. Am I understanding that correctly?
I think so. I think that's what it's saying.
So so there is, and grab the email address and a note to me that we need to get them the FAQs, and then I'll identify the area of the FAQs he needs to look at.
Okay. Great, thank you, Mike. A question here from Needy. Can we use 100% PPP on payroll and have forgiveness?
Yes. There's no requirement that you use it on anything other than payroll. They just allow you to if you're not able to spend all of it on payroll.
Great, awesome. A question here from Gurdeep. For an idle loan where a business closes or bankrupts, if an owner opens a new and separate business, does the new business now owe the outstanding idle amount? What happens if there is more than one owner of the business that was approved for the original idle? For example, how does SBA apportion the outstanding loan not discharged in bankruptcy to the owners going forward?
So they should the servicing, if they're actually facing this, servicing is a place they would ask that. What I can say generally speaking is he's correct in what he's stated, that that it's not going to get discharged. The question of whether it would be attributed to a new business, I don't know if that would be the case. They made a personal guarantee. So I'm not sure how that responsibility for that loan would directly impact the new business. Kate, would you have any thought on that?
No, unfortunately, I can't comment on that.
So my advice would be to contact the servicing, and that's really where they're going to be able to get that answer.
Cool, thank you, Michael. Question here from Carrie. What if the reduction in full-time employees is completely related to drop in a business and a layoff happened after using all PPP funds? How does this affect our PPP loan forgiveness?
Okay, so the layoff was after they used the funds.
Yes.
So at the time that they used the funds and all the way through spending it down, they had no reduction in employees.
It seems like they're implying that there was a reduction. It says, what if the reduction in full-time employees is related to the drop in business? So I think that's implying that the full-time employee was, like, it affected business.
Again, the requirement is that by the end of the covered period that they have to be back to what their required FTEs would be. That's why part of the help can be the changing to the 24-week period, because it gives you more time to do that. They should contact, if they have an advisor with SBDC already, reach out to them. Otherwise, call the 833 ASK-SBDC, and one of our advisors can actually go through their situation with them and point them in the right direction.
Cool, thank you, Mike. Another question for FTE reductions. This is from Carol. We are short one employee in the count prior to February 15th until now. Our advertising business drops substantially in March through July by approximately 30 to 40%. Our business model has changed as a direct result of COVID, and our clients are reducing marketing budgets due to COVID. We have eliminated a position at our business completely and will never replace this position. We have listed 17 employees on the PPP app, and now we have 16. Can that situation be considered a reasonable drop in full-time employees when we are asking for 100% forgiveness? So they're going from 17 to 16 employees, as well as a 30% drop in income.
The drop in income isn't going to be a decision. Hold on one second. And they're looking at, that's effectively about a 5% reduction in FTE. So, remember, you're looking at your reduction in FTEs and pay rate itself are 25% or less. So theoretically, again, I can't tell them that they're going to get, I can't tell anybody that, right? But the guidelines, the way they're stated in the FAQs and in the Act, that would be less than a 25% reduction in FTEs. So I don't think, on the surface, without looking into it more deeply, it seems like they would be within their numbers.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Question here from Brian. Are lease payments on equipment fully forgivable?
That would be, I believe that is the case. Verify that. Actually, sorry, I was thinking about idle. No, on a PPP, it's only the lease of the building, the rent on the building, the mortgage interest on the building, and the interest on a vehicle related to the business. I don't recall seeing lease payments. But if you capture their email address, I'd be glad to verify that so we don't take up the time here on the call.
Okay. Question here from Neil for PPP forgiveness. I laid off employees at the start of the pandemic, and I hired new employees during my 8-week PPPL period. I was back up to my pre-pandemic full-time employees during my 8-week period. Since there was no business, I had to lay off employees again in July. Since I was back to having full-time employees by June 30th, do I meet the forgiveness requirements of bringing my people back before December 31st?
On the surface of it, the requirement is that you, by the end of your covered period, you're back up to your full-time equivalents. And if he's fully spent down his funds, that's probably fine. If he wants to get to us with his actual dates, we could actually, look into that, specifically for him.
Great, thank you. Question from Patricia. I was told that my PPP application was received too late on August 8th at 4:36, even though I was approved. What was the cutoff time?
I can't speak to that. No idea.
Question from Vivian. I was a sole proprietor when I applied and got approved for the PPP loan. I usually hire 1099 whenever needed for my business to help me. I have 2 independent contractors during the PPP loan, and I used that money to pay them. Was that okay?
So they're not employees, and it is for payroll. Independent contractors they're their own business. They're eligible to apply for their own PPP.
Okay.
So the answer is no, sorry.
No, that's all right. Thank you, Mike. Question here from Patricia. Can a lender close the 8/8 PPP deadline when they, I think this is the same question as the last one. So, yeah, this is from Patricia. Question from,
Is that the one with the asking what time on the 8th of August?
yeah.
My recommendation would be my recommendation would be to call the bank, cite. I mean, if they've got an approval email, I would respond with that approval email and say, look, this was in, you approved it on or before the 8th. Is there any way we can address this?
Thank you, Michael.
And if she can't get an answer there, then I would refer to that email address that Janelle gave a little bit ago.
The Sacramento at okay. Cool, thank you. Question here from Marta. Says she was told that she could request more funding on her existing EIDL loan. Can you clarify and confirm?
I haven't heard such information.
Thank you. Let's see here. A question from Vivian. I applied for the EIDL loan before July 25th. When I become a limited liability company, but I got the loan approved and disbursement in August 5th. Is it part of the LLC or the sole proprietor? Oh, so she was a sole proprietor, and then she applied for a limited liability company on the July 25th, and then she got the loan approved for the 5th of August. So from July she applied, and then August she got the loan.
So she applied as a sole proprietor, and by the time she got the loan, she had changed her business formation to a limited liability company.
I believe that's what this question is saying. This is from Vivian.
I'm not sure what the requirements are around that. I mean, that would seem on the face of it that it's a change, and that they would have to notify someone. Kate, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I'm sorry, I can't speak to that.
So have them contact 833 ASKSBDC, and maybe we can put them, talk with someone at SBA and figure out what their, help them figure out what the requirements might be to address it.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Okay. We have a question here from Janine. Just like the bar owner in Texas who stayed open after being ordered to shut down by giving away free food and accepting donations. She's asking if, could a service provider here also see clients by donation only, like how that bar was doing it in Texas?
Can't speak to that.
Can't speak to that. It says, I realize.
I would say to the extent you attempt doing that, I think that's a form over substance issue where, essentially the act that the health order is trying to prevent is happening. So you may be able to argue that the wording of the order allows you to do that, but I would imagine that the county would probably very quickly shut that down. And it seems like you acknowledge that in the question. So, I mean, it comes down to the way the order is written, whether you have a legal argument that it doesn't exclude services provided in exchange for a donation, but I can imagine that wouldn't last very long.
Okay. Thank you, Kate. And Melanie, you're asking for the links again. So I'm going to re-enter those for you right now so you can see them. Okay, there we go. There you go, Melanie. Question, let's see. Question from Patricia Dawson. I begin my application process for a PPP loan before August 4th, and it was filed at 4/36. this was the same question, I think, as the cutoff date, Patricia. It says, okay, we'll give you an answer. It says, I didn't get my paperwork returned in time because they closed their PP application at 4 o'clock. She's asking if it was legal for them. I'd have to say that's a cutoff date, and it's hard to, you know, that's a hard time.
I mean, my only input to that is if they've got any, you know, if they're trying to push that, then that Sacramento email address is the only way I would know for them to get any other answer.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. From Vivian, can you use EIDL to pay IRS taxes 2019 due this year?
Well, I know you can't use it to pay tax liens. We'll have to get them an answer to that. I don't believe that you can, but we'll get them an answer to that.
We'll get their email. Question from Judy Fletcher. Should an EIDL applicant who is in the process of selling his business to his son and an employee accept the EIDL loan? What will happen after the applicant sells his business?
So that, we had a question earlier where that's actually the circumstance that they're facing. And that is one where we had sent them to the servicing email, but because this one is not a loan yet, get the email address and I'll contact the service center myself and just see if I can get an answer on a what if. Because that's been kind of a common question over the last few days.
Maybe we could have that for next week. Question from Bart Miller. What is the deadline for applying for PPP forgiveness? No extension was requested. PPP granted beginning May 1st.
So you've got until 10 months after their end of their covered period.
All right. Okay. I think they're re-asking this question. Do we have to spend down our existing accounts before we use the EIDL funds?
Any requirement to do so. They were granted their EIDL funds. They do have to document how they were using it and keep those keep that documentation on file in case they're ever asked for it.
Great, thank you. That's for you, Raul. There's a lot happening here. Okay. Commercial property. I have a commercial property, rental property tenant. I have, excuse me. I have a commercial rental property tenant left. I apologize. This question's weirdly worded. Oh, here we go. I have hard money loan on my rental commercial property. Can I get an SBA loan to pay off the high interest hard money loan?
So you can use SBA loans to refinance real estate debt.
Okay, great, thank you.
If they call again 833-ASK-SBDC, someone on the Finance Center team can help them look into what that structure might look like and help them put together their financials for that.
What's this? Let's see here. Okay. Marta says, sorry to circle back again on the question requesting more EIDL funding. On July 29th, Sunita said yes, that we could request more funding through PDC recons at sba.gov. I think they're asking for clarification.
Well, that's normally, that would be if you were declined, you would use that as to have your application reconsidered. But I'd be glad to circle back with Sunita and make sure that that's what she meant. But I don't know of any circumstance where people are able to go back and change their loan to get more.
All right, thank you, Michael. Patricia, yes, that's the correct email address. That was a disconnected question. Okay, we have, I guess, one last question here from Cindy Hood. I received an EIDL loan, but was told the $1,000 grant money was gone. Is there any option to still obtain this? I think that is not true.
That's depleted. Yeah, it's no longer available.
Great. And Judy Fletcher, what is the servicing center email and phone number? I'll give you that in one moment. And we have the service center contact in the chat right now. Judy. A question from Janine. Does anyone know anything about the class action lawsuits against insurance companies who are not paying out business? I don't think this is COVID related. Business interruption insurance?
It's probably related to the gal who asked earlier about business interruption related to COVID.
Okay.
I have no idea.
No updates.
Thank you. I'm not sure what this question is asking from Doug. It says, does the safe harbor provision include no inside dining for a restaurant due to county restrictions?
If that's related to, yeah, that we would have to circle back. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Because that really doesn't relate to available employees. That's more of not having a capacity to hire. But we can look into that. Yeah, make sure you're capturing, if you could, make sure you're capturing these emails.
You've got
Awesome,
them.
thank you.
Great. One last question here. Commercial lease moratorium. Any additional news after SB 939's failure? I'm not sure about that.
No additional news. Like we said before, you just have to check and see if your local city, or if you're in an unincorporated area of a county, your county has extended the eviction moratorium.
There we go. And those are all of our live questions for today. Oh, nope. Here, let's get one more question. Sorry to ask again, can I use the EIDL to pay independent contractors? And I believe that answer was no.
With EIDL, well, with PPP, it's no. With EIDL, I want to check on that. I'm not sure.
Okay, Vivian, yeah, don't disregard my answer. Mike will get you an answer. I can also take her email down for you as well.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to address something. I just got and this would be for Marta. I just got a message from Sunita. I had reached out to her, and she actually said that she had heard from SBA that they can ask for an increase via the reconsideration email. She said if they approve it or not is still unknown. So they're saying that, you know, they've said that they can go there for reconsideration, but she's not aware of whether anybody has been approved or not on those increases.
All right. Are we, excuse me, do we have an answer for Vivian on independent contractors?
No, I'm going to have to get that to her, like I said, via email.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that's all our questions for today. Okay, so I'm going to go over a little bit of some of our webinars we'll be doing for the next month here. We have on Monday, August 10th, that's a 4-part series. You could find all of these events down in a link below for our calendar. A case study of COVID exposure in the workplace, legal essentials for doing business online, responding to the new to-go delivery and provisioner model of running a restaurant, starting a food truck, how the rubber meets the road, Facebook shop for businesses, diversity and inclusion in the workplace, how to SEO like a pro, and Shopify basics. And Mike, if you wanted to close out.
Yeah, so we want to thank everybody for joining us today. We hope that you found this information helpful. To the degree that you come up with any other questions between now and the next call, please feel free to reach out to us at 833-ASK-SBDC. Please go to our website at ASKSBDC.com to find information and resources on upcoming events. Our emails are loan@asksbdc.com, as well as espanol.asksbdc.com. Again, we'd like to thank Kate Tyler for joining us today and being an attorney to help with any of your legal questions, as well as Brett Morrison for including that resource for everyone. And again, we're glad to be able to be here and be of assistance. We hope that you have a great week.
Great. Awesome. Take care,
Thanks,
everybody.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.